to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we have public comment limited to 3 minutes per person. Maximum public comment of 30 minutes. Does anybody wish to speak during public comment?
I don't know if I can hold it for 30 minutes or not. I'll try. My name is Peter Voss. Used to be on this board at one time. Actually, county board chair at one time also. I got involved in this issue recently and involved with it when they first talked about it 10 years ago. I started thinking about you guys. Where you at in your decision-making process. It's a very difficult situation you're in to try and come up with a solution for something that may be needed, maybe not be needed. So I tried to think about each one of you individually and how you would go at trying to understand where my audience would come from. I had a difficult time deciding that. And I said, well, what happens if I personally decided that I was going to be responsible for my district, which is District 1? Am I capable of giving a proper response for the elected officials and the citizens in my community? I looked at it and I said, I never contacted them. I never talked about it when I was elected because it was not on the agenda. I never had a meeting in any of the town halls that I have. Right? So I'm technically very poor and not prepared for what's going to happen in the decision-making process here. So I urge you to think about where the information you're going to get comes from. I think it's extremely important if you talk to your citizens. I'd love to have you do a referendum on the issues before you. At least the referendum will give citizens an opportunity to tell you how they feel. Right now, they don't have any input whatsoever. And that's why I'm here. I want to give them the opportunity for input into this process. So I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in public comment? Anybody else for public comment? Any other public comment? Hearing none, public comment is now closed. Before we start our presentations, I would like to welcome District 19 as a new board member, Mr. Ron Freeman. Welcome to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vacancy and go to the spot. And agenda, then we have presentations, starting with a jail presentation by Sheriff Grassman.
It's on find it, D drive. There it is. Okay. I am going to make this less than 10 minutes because there are people after me. You're welcome. I am not a Jeremy Jacobs.
Thank you for coming to work today.
Yeah. What I'm going to start with is an issue that's, I feel, very important in our jail. We have no room for programming for our inmates. We have no room for AODA counseling. We have no room for other counseling. We have no room for them to get their GED. We just don't have space. This is exactly a letter that I got a couple months ago from an inmate. If you want to take the 2 minutes to try to read that, this inmate actually says in there, this is the only jail that I've been to, and trust me, he's been to a few, where you just get thrown into jail and you just get left to sit there. There's no GED program. There's no AODA counseling. There's no mental health counseling. And you can tell that he is not a very educated human being. Every single inmate in our jail is being released back into our community. Every single one of them. Everyone. I feel it's kind of our duty to at least give them the tools or at least offer them the tools to help them become a productive member of society. And currently, we can't do that in our jail because of our spacing limitations. I'll show you some pictures in a little bit of our space limitations. But that's a letter that I got from a current inmate. Anyone have questions about that at all? Okay, it was said at the last county board meeting by somebody that there's issues with recruitment and retention at the highway department. I don't disagree with that. And it was said that maybe if we have a new highway department, maybe we could get more people to apply out there. I also don't disagree with that. Next slide, please. However, recruitment and retention at the highway department isn't nearly as bad as what it is at the sheriff's office. I got these numbers from department heads and I put this here in June of 2024. In the last, from 19 to 24, highway lost 5 workers, sheriff's office lost 24. More than half of those 24 were from the jail. Unlike highway, so if I'm a highway worker and I go to work at the highway shop, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I often am. If I'm a highway worker, the majority of my day is not spent in that building. Accurate? If I'm a jailer and I work for this county in the jail, while I'm employed here, almost half of my life is spent in that jail. Because our jailers work 60 hours a week usually. So almost half of my life, I'm actually in that jail. If I'm a highway worker, I'm usually outside of that building doing something. Next slide, please. Over the last couple of months, I've been writing down random things that I hear our jail staff saying. I've spent a lot of time up there the last 5 months because I've been doubling as the jail captain. I usually didn't spend that much time up there. But the last 5 months, these are some things that I hear our employees saying to me. This place like literally stinks. I wrote that down. It feels like I walk into an old insane asylum every day I come to work. I wrote that down. I sweat so much at work in the summer that I lose 15 pounds every year. I wrote that down. In the summertime in our jail, it is extremely hot up there. We try to run as many fans as we can down the hallways, but it's still, jailers will go do their round and come back as quick as they can to get into dispatch because that's where it's air conditioned, is in dispatch. Then the last one was just said a couple weeks ago by one of our sergeants. Someone is going to get hurt in here and they shouldn't have to. Next slide, please. Here's some efficiencies that a new pod jail would offer. As it is right now, when we have to move an inmate from one area of the jail to the other, they have to be physically with a jailer. Because we have long linear hallways and corners that you can't see around and areas of the jail that aren't covered by camera, there has to be a jailer with them at all times. In a pod style jail, all you have to do is remotely unlock that inmate's cell door. They can walk from that jail cell to a different part of the jail and they're being viewed by central control at all times. We don't have to have a jailer with them because they have physical eyes on them. We can't have physical eyes on inmates right now. Use of inmate workers without physical supervision. As of right now, if I wanted to implement an inmate work program in our jail, we would have to have a jailer with that inmate the entire time they're sweeping or mopping or doing dishes or whatever. With a podular jail, if they're going to be sweeping or mopping, we wouldn't have to have a jailer with them because from central control, you could see that inmate the entire time. Staff completing duties while still able to have eyes on inmates. In central control, our staff can still complete day-to-day tasks and still see every single inmate in that jail. There's no bars in the new jail. Bars are very, 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 very bad in jail, and our jail is full of them. The reason they're very bad is because that's something you can hang yourself from. New jails are just concrete walls. There's no bars. There's nothing in those new jail cells we can tie off a bed sheet and put around your neck. We have tons of bars. Increase in receiver cells. Our jail staff struggles weekly with where to put inmates. Our receiver cells are often full. And if something else happens in the jail and we desperately need to use one of those receiver cells, our jail staff have to try to figure out, okay, these people are in the receiver cells for a reason, but now I guess something bigger and more important came up. Where do we put this person without other people getting hurt? Safety of maintenance staff. So oftentimes our county maintenance workers have to come into the jail to fix things several times a year, multiple times a year. With a new jail, all of that electrical work, all of that plumbing work will be on the outside of the jail in that catwalk in between the exterior wall and the actual jail cells. Correct, Corey? So they wouldn't have to enter the jail. Our maintenance workers would not have to come inside of the jail. They could do all that plumbing, and electrical work and stay out of the jail. Room for expansion with the current design. I believe the very last design that our ad hoc construction committee settled on was a 50-something bed jail, but a quarter of it wasn't finished yet. So in 10, 15, 20 years, if we wanted to add on to the jail, add more beds, we wouldn't have to shut the current jail down. I don't know if you guys have heard, I've heard it a couple times that Wisconsin is possibly looking at closing down one of its prisons. Those inmates are going to have to go somewhere. The state hasn't said indefinitely if they're going to close that prison yet, but if that happens, those inmates need to go somewhere. They're not going to be let out of jail. There are possibilities for revenue with a jail if it can house enough inmates. Next one. I took a couple pictures. There's 50-some pictures, but at the very top left picture, you can see our jail is full of those long linear hallways with corners at the end of them. Cameras don't cover around those corners. That's a security issue for jail deputies. The very next picture, top middle, that's where we're supposed to be having visitation. That's where family members, that's where attorneys, that's where clergy, that's where probation and parole are supposed to meet with people in our jail. We're so out of space that we need to use that for storage. The very next picture is now where they do it, and it's actually in our jail. So probation, clergy, attorneys have to meet with inmates in that room. It's small, but there's no barrier in between all those people in the community and the inmates. The very bottom picture, that's Sergeant Tom Olenek, now the jail captain. You can see that's the catwalk where they do rounds every single hour. And there's enough room there for pretty much just one person to walk down. Any inmate can stick their hands through those bars and grab one of our jailers. There's not enough room between the window wall and the jail cell doors. So that's a security issue for our staff. Also, that button he's pointing to, that's for the inmates to push when there's an emergency in their jail cell. They don't. If there's an emergency in one of our cells, they have to bang and pound on bars or yell and scream. That's the emergency call button. That's a problem for the inmates as well. Jail meals. We spent over $200,000 in 2023 in jail meals. The jail meals bill was a little bit smaller in 2024, but I'm pretty certain that's because we housed several inmates out of county for quite a while. There's a real concern with our meals right now. Because I think that question I asked right there, I think it's a super realistic question. What if there's a fire tonight at Family Restaurant? Where are we getting our meals? I don't know. I have no idea where we're going to get our meals. McDonald's, Subway, but they're not going to open up on Christmas Day. They're not going to open up on every other holiday. We need someplace that's 365, 3 meals a day. We're not going to find a bar in Russ County to make us 3 meals a day for all of our inmates every single day of the year. So I really don't know what we would do if the Family Restaurant closed. I would take your suggestions clearly because I don't know what we would do for inmate meals. If we have a new jail, we have a kitchen in our jail, we don't staff that. Company staffs that, and they're responsible for staffing the people to make those meals every single day out of the year. There's multiple companies to choose from. There's not just one. But that's not on the county. We don't have to staff those employees. I think that's the last slide, is it not? Okay, am I done or do you want me to field questions?
Good questions.
Okay.
Questions for Mr. Grassman? That's it.
Are there prisoners or people in the jail that are in jail for child support, not paying their child support?
Sometimes.
So they're taking up space also. Do we have any, well, obviously not, do
Usually,
we have any programs?
so usually what happens with child support is usually they're in our jail for a short time. Usually, because they find somebody to come. If I'm 10,000 behind on child support, I think the way the system works, I don't work for HHS or child support, but if I'm 10,000 behind on child support, I think there's what they call a purge. So if I pay $1,200, I can purge my jail sentence to get out. So usually child support people don't sit the full term of their sentence when we arrest them on child support.
Any other questions for the sheriff?
I was wondering about the pond system. I remember when we went and visited and they were saying that that is going out of style. It's not efficient.
The pod system is not efficient. That's what everyone's building right now. Yeah, the linear design of the jail is going out of style. That's not efficient. Everyone's building the pod system because it is more efficient. That's why we toured those. That's why Barron started with linear and went to a pod. That's why Green Lake County, they had linear, went to a pod. Trempealeau had linear, went to a pod. Pod style, that circle style now is the efficient way to build a jail. And getting rid of the long hallways or corridors, getting rid of the bars.
Mr. Vincent?
Sheriff, I think at the last meeting, I had heard that there had been some back and forth about different features of the jail and that originally there was supposed to be a skyport, right, to aid in efficient prisoner transport that ultimately got, taken from the final design. Do you have any other design or other reservations about the current, about the path that we're going to learn about tonight?
So your first question about the skywalk, my only concern with that, our entire department's concern with that is we would have to hire at least 2 more full-time personnel. Because we would need people to bring those inmates from the jail over to the old Sally Port right here so they could access the courts. So we're gonna transport them a half a block. We need a vehicle because we don't want to be walking inmates back and forth out in public. That's just even more of a security threat. Every time someone leaves our jail, it's a security issue. Whether we bring them to the hospital, bring them to get a tooth pulled, whatever. It's a security issue when they leave our jail. If we're hiring 2 more full-time staff and having to buy a vehicle, I'm gonna just throw a number out there that's about $250,000 a year to have 2 full-time employees with benefits, health insurance, and add a vehicle onto that. If the skywalk comes in at $3 million-ish, you would pay for that skywalk in about 12 years. And after year 12, the county would just keep incurring that 250 to the operating budget. Your second question was what?
Was there anything else like that?
Oh, anything else that was taken out of the jail that we disagreed with?
Or wasn't in the design to begin with?
So for those that are new-ish, the jail project has been a 3-year project. I think we started it in 2022. There have been probably at least 20 or 30 different renditions. At the ad hoc construction committee meetings, they would say, okay, I don't think you need this. And I don't think you need this. And I think we should push this up there. So we would come back the next month with what they asked, or with 4, 5, 6 different options. We looked at the kitchen jail. The kitchen Does it need to be that big? Does it have to be that big? Can we take some square footage off of it? Sergeant's offices, we would like sergeant offices in our jail. I think we got rid of those. There were other administrative areas in the jail as far as offices that we cut to bring the square footage down, to get it to a level where our department, ad hoc construction, kind of met in the middle. You know, do I think building a 52-bed jail is the best idea? I don't. But as long as this board is okay with looking at the possibility of expanding in the future if we need to, with the current way that the last jail was drawn up, we can always change. I mean, everything changes, not just the jail. So if we do see an increase in inmate population in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years, we have that ability and that option. If we see that, hey, the jail has had this contract for 5 inmates for the last 7 years, and we're making money on this, would it be feasible or a good idea to add those extra beds and up our contract to 10 to 15 beds? You know, it just gives us more options. Do I like the idea of 52? I don't, but I like the idea of having the option to expand and not having to build the walls of the actual jail out because we don't have room.
Any other questions for Sheriff Grassman? Other questions?
Just for the record, I was done at 7:15 with my presentation.
The-
So you went 5 minutes over.
Question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the presentations by Venture Architects. Gail?
Good evening. Corey Weiner with Venture Architects. Was requested to give you a high level overview of what we really started, kind of went through and where we are today. These are some of the revisions, renditions that we've done over time. And you see like the top row, these are all different aspects laying out the jail. On this campus site, you can see we're looking at each parking lot, looking at some of the options of if we took down some of the existing buildings, excuse me, et cetera. Before we get to this point, what we do is a space program. We meet with the staff, discuss their needs, look at the projections of the jail. We look at the data for their detainees over time. And then we project that what it may be in 20 years or so. What we'd like to do is at least have a plan for the future for at least 20 years. So with that aspect, what we discovered, a jail which should be about 82 beds is what the 20-year projection was. Taking that into consideration, we started looking at laying these things out. If you look at that top row, pretty much every one of those, taking that space program and laying that out on the site, you can see that they hit 1 or 2 of the streets. As we progressed in the design, it was discussed and not close any of the streets. So we kind of backed off on that. And then the other bottom rows, we started looking at revisions on the south side in that parking lot, which is county owned. So we started looking at those options. So those are numerous different ways to look at that. And over time, we looked at that. Our contract was signed in May of 2023. Our first meeting was in June of 2023. So you can kind of get an idea of how much time we spent in getting to today. So the upper left project, at one point in time, maybe most of you recall that we looked at if potentially if that was closing the street, we could do the jail in there. We would connect it to the existing facility. With that aspect, it was a clear way to get inmates to the courthouse up on that second level. So that attachment, we wouldn't have the skywalk at that point in time. It would just be a direct connection. Shorter distance, when you want to try to get detainees to courts, you want that shortest distance to do that, because again, when you're transporting, even if it's inside a facility, anything can happen. That's when, staff and the inmates are vulnerable. Next slide on the right, again, we started looking at, that east parking lot, looking at some of those aspects, trying to get it into that parking lot and on the site. Started looking at where we can cut some of the scope. As you progress on the upper, some of that we put the site, but then there's some additional work and renovation work into the existing. And again, not getting inmates direct access to the courts. We looked at how we're going to do that as well. One of the options was, do we renovate the whole courtroom and kind of flip it? And that way you have court holding on the other side. Obviously, any renovation work in the existing is going to add additional costs above and beyond just the jail proper. The next one off the upper right, again, we got it all on the site. We can get that direct connection, but a couple aspects to that nature. It's lower housing pods. We're also eliminating all those buildings on that south side. So again, all of those departments would have to be relocated, find a new location. Either there's a place here in town that could occupy them, or a new facility. Obviously, that's additional cost. So we try to avoid that as much as possible. Going back to it, that lower level, looking at that, trying to cut the cost. The colored version off to the left there on that lower left end diagram, that's the existing jail. You'll see those areas in red. That is the housing areas. We can't change those in the existing jail. Also, if you do any renovations in the existing jail, you have to bring that all up to current codes for building codes as well as Department of Corrections. Department of Corrections since 2014 has new requirements for space needs. Programming, as the sheriff mentioned, you need 300 square foot program space for 100 inmates or less. You don't have that accommodated in the existing jail. Your existing capacity for the jail, is 52 currently. If you do any revisions, we looked at that for the space needs of what you're going to need for requirements for the Department of Corrections. You're actually losing beds down to 37. Just so that if you understand, we looked at renovation of the existing, we're actually losing beds and quantities and still not meeting that. You still don't have laundry, kitchen, all some of the other aspects that the jail would require. On the right-hand side, again, looking at a new addition, we still have some demolitions on that as well. That lower left-hand corner, that was a 53-bed option. And I know I mentioned a little bit here about classifications of inmates. We try to keep as many classifications as possible. When somebody comes in, you can't house, let's say, 3 people come in for the same crime. You can't house them together. You got male and females. It would be minimum, medium, and maximum. You have all sorts of aspects to those inmates that you can't house together. You can't house family members together. So that's what you look at. So it was limited to what that version was 10 classification. So again, it doesn't meet your scope. Even brought up, so during design vote last year at this time, we had some plans. We took them out to the public. We had communications plan. We met at least 3 times with the public. Public came in. We had a very good turnout on a lot of them. And we took some of those comments back. So we looked at it and numerous times, and I think even one of the ad hoc members talked about, what if we do it a brand new building, standalone someplace? So we looked at that aspect as well. That's the middle lower one. And again, looking at that cost factor. Also during design, it was brought up when you had the old clinic. Can we do something with that? Maybe we can put courts out there. put the jail addition out there. So we looked at that aspect as well. So that's the lower right one. Next slide, Ashley. So after going through numerous of those renditions, we came up with this design. We have it completely across the street. This would have that skywalk option. This was a 60-bed option, but it kept the majority of the other scope that's
Corey, this one is actually the one that we did at the communication plan. This is the one prior to the reduction.
So that's this one. I have Kurt Berner from Samuels Group. He has a lot of the cost aspects to these projects, and I believe this was the 38.5 million model. So that was that option.
First, on the standalone, on the slide before that.
Yeah.
The costs on that,
It was 42.
and that would be on a remote spot.
Yeah, and it was really driven by additional site costs that we didn't have here. And with not knowing which site it was kind of a variable thing. That would be the premium if we did a greenfield site.
But again, we went back again, looking at the existing building as a whole, what could we do with that? And again, keep in mind, if we're putting the jail in this existing building, those departments that we would have to relocate, we'd have to find space for that. Again, that's additional cost. Also, you'll see in that middle slide of the existing building, those pink areas, those areas that we could not touch, either their egress as far as stairs, restrooms, etc. That blue bar running across. So it might be slightly out of order, but the addition is off on the left-hand side. You have to have a secure corridor. That would have to run through across, get to that existing jail elevator, go up to courts, and then they go to courts. Be splitting those departments in half. So if public comes in one entryway, they have no easy access to the upper levels of that south area. But again, we are looking at that renovation of that. Maybe we could put some of the jail support, et cetera, in the existing building and then just put the housing. Again, cutting some of that scope. That also had an expansion option. That was, as designed, was 29 beds. And then the future expansion, we could add on another 17, but it had 13 classifications. But it did have extensive renovation, which is an additional cost. And again, we can't put the jail in this existing building because the existing structure can't hold the weight of a jail. You're of all solid concrete block masonry. So the weight of that, your structure has to be designed to accommodate that, and this one is not. That, oh, sorry. That lower left-hand corner was another revision that we took a look at. We got it on what could we do on just occupying that east parking lot. Keep in mind, we don't have any jail access from the jail to the courts. You also don't have access from law enforcement to the jail. If something happens, they literally would have to go around the building to get into the jail and occupy it that way. And also with that revision, it was 36 beds, only 8 classifications. There was no booking, pre-book, sorry, there's booking, but no pre-booking, no jail support. There was only 4 receivers in this option, and I apologize. When we did our program, it was requested that we try to get 10 receivers in it. Obviously, we've dwindled down when we got to this option down to 4. So again, that option does not meet the scope. And Kurt, you can remind me, I think this was the $25 million option. And quite a bit was eliminated just to get it up occupying that. So this is kind of where we are today, this option. You'll see that the darker burnt orange color, that is the jail housing. The white portion off to the right there that we have in there is what the sheriff commented on as far as potential future expansion. So we reduced a lot of out of here. We don't have any Huber facilities. We've pretty much eliminated. We have one public visitation booth in here. which you currently have one, so we're not expanding any of that. We've reduced a lot of the jail administration. We reduced kitchen and laundry, et cetera, all of those aspects. And we're down to 5 receivers. So again, we started at 10, we're now cut that in half and we're down to 5. However, with this design, that housing pod would house the 52 beds that was mentioned, but we also have 17 classifications that we get in that. So that gives the staff flexibility to move inmates around when needed. If you have more, say, medium inmates coming in, your housing pod only accommodates 2, you have the viability of relocating some of those inmates to other areas of the housing pod and still meeting the classifications that's required by DOC. With the future expansion there that's in white, if you do that, and if it's 5-10 years from now, it was designed for 47 additional beds. So in the future, this option would be 99 beds total. We also looked at this as we go through this for master planning for your facility. In the future, right now, your courts, if you have to do any additional courts, if there's any additional county government, you don't have any space here on site, potentially you could do that off to that east portion. Again, it would have to be purchasing those properties, but at least it's master plan for the future if you need to at that time. This design also, and I mentioned about the skywalk, we have it in there that you could still, as an alternate bid, if you went out for bids with that, we can design it, include it, and it'd be an alternate bid. So it's just a separate price number when we get the bids in there, so you know what that would cost above and beyond the base bid that we accounted for. Also, again, we designed it for future expansion on to the right for county government. Any questions on this design? Kurt, can you evaluate on the bidding process for like those options?
Corey. Just curious, you said that if we built on the campus here, there would have to be some departments displaced.
If you tore down some of the existing buildings,
Right.
you'd have to relocate them.
Okay, so how many departments would have to be
It would
removed?
depend upon the option that we choose on how much building we have. As you remember, we looked at all different aspects for the salt buildings, we looked at existing main building as well, all different options. So it would just depend upon which one we would never on.
So I guess then I'd like to ask the option. I think it was, if you want to go back.
Tom?
It was the option basically that. Out that way up. Stuff like. And then,
Those smaller ones,
yeah,
those all of those were either reaching the sidewalk or into the street. Some portion. And again, these were one we were looking at. When we did the space program, we had that square footage for what was needed.
wasn't the one in particular, that was like 36 pages?
Yeah. That was that lower left one, that's the 36 bed option. But there's also, again, there's the numerous things that were eliminated from that scope. You have no access.
But there was another one, actually, the jail was not that part, but it was down. Isn't it down?
The one that he showed, the colored one, go back.
That's an example.
The one up on top there, see how the jail is up in the corner, and then the other side, you can go down with the bottom with it.
Yeah.
I think that's what.
Yeah, so in that example, then, like, any departments do you think? So,
But that's your loading dock, First reason there. All the buildings have to be relocated. There are number of
It's
buildings.
the first level.
Yeah, it's, well, the whole, everything would have to be finished.
The second floor. There's more than three.
And in that portion?
In the pink portion?
Yeah.
So that's the maintenance shop and garage. That is the ambulance and emergency management, and that is medical examiner.
This option is, well, no access to direct. This option is still the driving around the block. The other latest one, we're going from one side to the other. This one's going around. You still have that transportation.
And there's no direct access on that from here to.
No, we looked at, if you remember, we also looked at adding like a corridor under the outside of that. That also impacted, as well as structurally, the tower, radio tower would have to be relocated, and there's should be an
Some HVAC
allocated for just that.
Thank you.
It's probably the, it was discussed to have the skywalk option added, was that about a 3 million addition?
Yeah, actually, if you want to go, maybe we'll start right there. Go back to the proposed option, right there. That proposed option that is shown in front of you right there was a 25-bed jail, and it had the skywalk. And that was $38.5 million. And when we presented that to the community, at those town hall meetings, I had several people that would come up to me after the meeting and said, this county can't afford that. How can we cut this down? And the skywalk was like just like I had like a radar on it. Why do we have to spend $3 million, right? I want to talk a little bit about the skywalk. The picture doesn't do it justice of why it would be $3 million. So the skywalk itself has to be detention grade to get from the jail over to the existing jail facility. Where that connects to the jail facility, there is the chiller that feeds your existing campus right there. That chiller has to be relocated in order to put the footings and foundations for that skywalk to be able to carry its weight across the building there. The other thing that goes along with that is there is a small portion of renovation that would have to be done. There would have to be an opening knocked in that wall, and there's going to have to be some renovations to that corridor. What we're wanting to get is a secure connection from the jail there over to the existing elevator that takes you to courts. Okay, so there's renovation cost in there, as well as there is an elevator. If we don't have the skywalk, we don't need an elevator in the jail. Okay, so we have elevator costs. So when everybody looks at me and says, how can it be $3 million? It's just this little line. There's a lot that goes into that, right? And that's why how we got to where we got to was we started in June of 23. We got to February of 24. The ad hoc committee had made the recommendation for this option to take for the communications plan. We went to the community the first week in April of 2024, got the feedback, and then we met with a new ad hoc committee in August of 24. And when we met in August of 24, it was, what do we do, right? A lot of the things that I heard from community members was this: we can't afford this. We know we need a jail, but we can't afford this. Is there something that we can do to reduce cost? And by the way, we have a highway shop that is leaking. The roof is leaking. We got problems, right? So if you want to blame somebody, you can blame me, because I went out and I met with Justin. I think I asked for permission before I did that. I went out and I asked Justin, and I said, hey, can I just look at your building? Because I had not seen it. I was hired to be the construction manager for the jail. And I went out there and I wanted to see just how bad was it? Because in your master plan, the jail is here, and I call them 1A and 1B. You guys got two needs, right? And when I went out there and I started looking at their operation, I was appalled of what they're doing. What they're having to do to get the equipment that they need to do their job just because of the building that you don't have for them, right? So what came to you in October of 2024 was taking this right here and scaling it down so that you're scaling it down, that you're not suffering operationally, that in the future you can add back what we took away. And if there was anything that you could take out that you can't add back, ask the hard question of, Can we live without this forever? That's how we got to this, right? The other thing coupled with that is that at the time that we're doing that, this $38.5 million number, the cost of construction is going like this. So if you want to do some quick math and you see what we took out, you're going to say, hey, why isn't it lower than $33.5 million? It's because inflation was doing this to us while we were cutting. And we got to that $33.5 million. And Jim, I know you asked last month, is the number still valid? We put this together in October. This sheet that I gave you right here is the budget that we put together. I confirmed that with my estimating team. If we bid the project right now, we are comfortable with these numbers, right? How long you guys decide to wait is going to change that answer because of what happens with inflation. And that's part of why we're having this discussion. So in that $33.5 million number, there is no skywalk. There is also a reduction in your, go to the next slide, next two slides, Ashley. There is also a reduction in your bed count. So you're at 52. There were many people that came up to me in that component and said, why do we have to build the jail so big? Can we just replace our jail? This is a replacement of your jail. What you're seeing in front of you is listening to community feedback and doing our best to get you the best solution that you can for the budget that can be maximized for your constituents. The area that's in white gives you the ability to expand that jail without adding any other staff. I know what Corey talked about the other areas. Staffing was a big piece that we worked with ad hoc. I know I shared it with the county board. And I will tell you, there's board members here that I am seeing your faces obviously for the first time, right? So we have went through multitude of analysis, not only on the build, but the operations. So the moment that we build another portion on that isn't in that pot and we have to add a post because we're running under a 3-post design, every post adds about $500,000 on your operating budget. And if you just say we're going to go and park another little pot over here to give us 25 more beds, it's $1 to $1.5 million on your operating budget. Those are big dollars, right? So that's why we're focused on keeping it a 3-post design so that it can be expandable. This sheet that I gave you right here is our work sequence. So when you see this budget that I gave you, the way that this process works is we are a construction manager. And the way that we do this is everything that has to be done here has to be competitively bid, just like what CUNY is going to tell you, right? But we break this down into small bid packages. And the bid packages are referenced. This is a different job, but we would use a very similar format for yours. This is another jail that we just recently. And you would get a bid tab on bid day of all of these bidders, right? And then we're going to qualify them. So what it means by qualification is we put some language in there to show that they've had some correctional experience. And then we actually put somebody on site full-time. I will have staff here full-time overseeing the build because this is a very intricate building. There's a lot of systems, a lot of components, a lot of requirements that we have to have with the DOC so that we don't have a Tennessee situation. If you look up, just Google the Tennessee jail, they're having to go through and rip walls apart because they had people in there stuffing weapons and things in the walls, right? So we need to make sure that we have qualified contractors that are going to be able to perform the work. So that happens after we bid the project. And what I recommended to ad hoc was go to the highway. Let's scale this down because at the time, Justin told you guys, you can afford somewhere between $38 and $40 million and stay underneath what his advisement would be. And in my mind, if we can reduce the jail down so that it is livable, but it's also expandable, that's what you have before you. That's what we have analyzed. And then go out and find a phase 1 of the highway shop that would keep you under that $40 million mark. That's how you got to where you were, right? And so the RFP went out. I don't remember what month it was, December or whatever. You guys selected CUNY, and the discussion at the ad hoc committee at that time was let's bring both of them together and we will run them together in tandem on a design and then look to bid them out, right? So here would be my recommendation as a construction manager, and I'm not allied with either one of these, Venture or CUNY. I think you need to hire them to do the full design for both of them, but break them down into alternates, right? Like Corey said, I think you should have them design that as an alternate so that it has the skywalk, that we're gonna get a base bid without the skywalk, but we will have a number from contractors that says, here's what it is to pay for our skywalk. You could also go as far as tell him what it would be to shell that space. They don't have to build it, but we would have a number to shell the space, right? That's a determination that we can give to them. And now when the bids come back, you then have the right to say, no, we don't want to spend that amount of money. I've had counties that said, this is too much, we're going to wait. And then you still have the documents that if you want to bid them in the future, you could bid the alternate portion, or you could bid a portion of that. So I wanted to summarize that for you because that was the questions that were coming up last month. I know you asked me to keep it brief, but yeah, I hope it was brief enough. There's 2 years of history here, right? And not only did we go through a multitude of options, we did talk to the constituents. We did get some feedback. Now, granted, maybe not everybody was there, but there's a website out there for them to view. And I think as you look at what CUNY is going to present, there's been some good logic put in what they're going to give to you, and what you have in front of you in regards to that resolution is a good, it's a good logical way to step forward with this. Have them get through design development. We will do an updated budget. I will give you an updated one of these before you pull the trigger to put the bid documents out. Do the same thing with them. And then we will reconnect here, and then you'll know what that number is. So that's all I got. Any questions?
What is the timeline from start to finish of the jail?
Yeah, so construction timeline for the jail, I've given an estimate of 24 to 30 months. It depends on what scope we put in there, right? If we're gonna do Skywalk or not, but 24 to 30 months. Corey can speak on how long it'll take to design.
From where we are right now with this floor plan, it would be about 7 months to complete the design and go out for bidding. So if we were approved today, hopefully getting, up for bids in December. That way they can start right away in spring. That's kind of the perfect scenario, getting at.
Mr. Willingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you go back to the slide with the skywalk? There it is. So my recollection is that when we did the original study with Gold, that their recommendation was the south side of the courthouse and then around. Is that correct? Okay. You remember?
That's what I remembered. It was an option.
Yeah, that was sort of where they were going with that. And so I'm looking at that and I'm thinking to myself, you say it would cost $3 million to build a skywalk.
Mhm.
So what if you started at the front of the current building and went out to the sidewalk, right? And then instead of a narrow little skimpy skywalk, you built the same width of that building across the street. So instead of having a skywalk, you'd have a tunnel and then build the rest of the two-story building on the other side of the street.
So you're proposing a tunnel under the road?
No. I mean, if you, instead of a skywalk this wide, you had a building, the building going out across the street other than just a skywalk. So then you would, covering the street.
Are you asking if it would save money?
No, what I'm saying is that by the time you got onto the other side of the street, you wouldn't have all that construction over there. You'd have part of it on this side of the street, second story that goes across, and a 2 stories building on the other side of this.
I think that the element that needs to be emphasized, if you go back to the colored version, is that the jail, the pod that you see there, that dark red area there, that all has to be together. You can't separate it, right? And then you have to have the adjacency to that pod with the support is key. So
You're showing it like this. You would turn it this way instead.
I guess I'm not following what you're proposing. We did see what Wald had presented, and essentially what Wald was doing was adding another linear jail to a linear jail. And the pod model is not included in that approach.
Still say that if you took that red, instead of doing it this way, you turned it this way and put it.
Actually, go to the first slide.
Yeah.
So what I think what you're saying is essentially that second upper slide. We took that and kind of rotated it. We're still impacting on the street.
Cover the street, you, this, where the skywalk is would be all the way the same width as the building in front of the current courthouse.
Yeah, if we're doing that to save money, it wouldn't save you money. Elevating that square footage, that's not cost effective. Having it so that we have that stack pod. What we've presented here is the most cost effective solution for being able to get across the street.
But to your point, yeah, if you would be paying for that little bit, you'd have the whole thing but yeah, I think that would be more costly spanning that width, that whole housing product across. Be a little bit, much more costly.
Well, you might have your programming area and your offices on that dated portion. And the jail out on the other side of the street.
Meyer?
May I ask, well, I know you have to do extra building, but the green site. I know it's more money because I heard, I think Mr. Underwood asked it was 42.
Yep.
How many beds were in that?
It would, I guess, a better way for me to say that, Jim, is that to go to a greenfield site, the increased cost, because building for building, right? So essentially across the street, the building, you could pick that up and put it on a greenfield site. The comparable would be is where are the utilities located and then what do we have to do for site improvements, right? So largely what you have parked around this is you already have finished sidewalks, right? You've already got a pad that's a site that's pad ready. We don't know if we got to do clearing and grubbing and then what utilities. So I put, typically that's a $2 to $3 million premium that you have on those elements that are tied into that. So the greenfield site really came down to if we're going to put a greenfield site somewhere and we're going to have transport, the closer the transport, the better. So we talked about those things, kind of narrowing down the options. And that's where this one kind of rested. The other piece of that, and maybe go one more slide, Ashley. Oh, yeah, all the way to the end. One more. You see that red line that's on the right side? And I know those are private properties. That has been, they've done a space analysis that when you need to replace the courthouse, that courthouse can then be built right on that right side and it fits with the programming space that you have right now. So then in your 20 or 30 year plan, when you need to replace the courthouse, now your transport problems go away, right? And you could build it right there. Infrastructure stays there, right? So now what you're essentially doing over the course of the next 30 to 50 years, you're taking and building on a parking lot, and then you will make where the courthouse would be a parking lot. That's years down the road, right? But there is a game plan for you to be able to do that.
I like, because this has been bothering me as to where this is gonna go someday.
Yep.
Is the jail gonna end up here in a part of a block and then someday 30 years courthouse ends up on a greenfield site somewhere else or whatever.
And I think one of the elements from the master plan side, right? So you had a 1A and a 1B, you guys now evaluate. So if you do a borrowing and the courthouse is out there 20 to 30 years, you have a game plan that this is where the courthouse goes. So that has to be transferred over to the next boards to say, we do have a game plan, right? And now we're going to plan for that to be done because it will have to happen at some point.
You have another question. Is that okay? Two things. One, considerations have been given to the use of alternatives to incarceration. It seems to me that the trend in this business is to reduce the amount of actual jail incarceration. and encourage more alternative programming, like humor programs and other version programs that I think could reduce the need for a number of jail cells. Then the other question that goes along with that is, somebody told me just recently, and it may, I don't know how this information is, somebody that say within the next 20 years, there's going to be somewhere along the line of 40% reduction in population in Rusk County.
Yeah, so there's a bunch in that question, and I'll have the sheriff touch on one of them. So the first one is, we do have many counties that we work with that do have the electronic monitor, right? And that's the discussion that you're having here. Something you need to be aware of is even when you have somebody on that monitor, that bracelet, you have to have a cell assigned to them or have space in the jail, because it takes one event while they're out there, but they have to come back to the jail. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have them for all of them, but there has to be a contingency for that. The Rusk County population element, and this is something that comes up on every county project that we have, the reduction in the population does not necessarily coincide with your jail population, because there are people that commit a crime that aren't Rusk County residents, and that's where the ADP is a better indicator.
But if we're gonna reduce the population by 40%, I'm sure it's not gonna be just non-criminals that.
Yeah, and it's an unknown, right? But I do have counties where their populations have gone down, but now they have during tourist season, or they've got a highway that happens to flow through there, that they carry a bunch of goodies in and they end up being in jail. That is something that doesn't happen from the residents, but it is something that happens within the community. So I don't know if you're talking about anything else on incarceration.
Population information is not to be relevant. It may not totally affect from a standpoint of 40%.
Correct.
I just seem to be like, we need to be looking at more alternatives rather than just, I mean, I think it's pretty well common knowledge that our country incarcerates more people and a percentage of its population than any other country in the world. In some very, very, very nice places, not have the level of. So we.
Mr. Grassman, if you do have anything you want to chime in on alternatives, so it means you can.
I can tell you guys that between myself, Chief Deputy Matt Wycheck, and Jail Captain Tom Holnick, we are looking at more programs for our jail. We're looking at we're in very, very, very preliminary stages, early stages of possibly looking at a pre-arrest diversion program. We have to have a meeting, state in a different county that have that program right now. I think it's next. We've never had that. We're also looking at, hopefully in the next couple of months, revamping our electronic monitor program. Very strict right now, and it's very hard to get on. We've only had people on it in the last year or two. We have to take into consideration the public for that purpose, the crime they've been convicted of, and do we think this person will benefit from being outside of the jail, and will the community benefit from them being outside of the jail? That also will create possibly more revenue for the county, the more people we have on that program, because we want to purchase all the equipment for that program. We don't want to use a company for that program that gets most of the money. We want to purchase that equipment. But to Kurt's point, if we have someone out on EMP, I also need to have a bed available for that person, because that person could mess up tonight and they're coming right back to jail. So if we have 8, we're going to need to have possibility of 8 cells available. You know, all mess up on the same night, probably not, but there's a high probability that maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them of the 8 might mess up, and we still have to house them, and they can no longer be on the EM.
So if all your cells are full and somebody who's not on monitoring messes up with them,
If all of our cells are full,
Yeah.
we would have to house that inmate out of county.
Well, you could do that theoretically with,
What?
if you didn't hold an empty cell for somebody who's on electronic monitoring and they messed up, they could be taken.
Yes, we have to find a county that would accept that inmate. And it could be Sharon, it could be what's this there, but then there's that added cost of having that inmate up every day. But is it a possibility? Yes, it is.
Other questions? Snyder.
The white areas on these two, those aren't going to exist or aren't going to be bid?
So, on the left-hand side,
Yeah.
that white area, what we were proposing, you could do two different options. We could design it as an alternate bid, spell it out as an alternate bid. So day one, that wouldn't be included.
The white on the right one, the bottom half is roof. So the spot, yeah.
Double checking. And the other thing is, seen places, I presume it's Sally Ports where they're like 2 stories in the garage, which is an awful lot of wasted space, I think. You know, are we doing that or not?
The height of the Sally port depends upon garage height. So we have to have 14-foot doors. That's where the height comes in. If you're referring to like Trempealeau, they decided to put a mezzanine for storage. This option does not have that. We have no storage in the Sally port.
I think we kind of thought that we could use part of the old jail for storage.
Any other questions?
Thanks for everyone's time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have highway presentation by Commissioner Livingston.
So you all been out to the highway facility, majority except for the new one, a few who weren't around.
Can you move a little closer to the bike?
Swing the mic in front of you, Jason.
All right, so most of you been around, most of you have come out to the highway facilities, been a few new ones. You guys seen what we deal with on a day-to-day basis? With equipment being crammed in there, the wasted time that can occur by what we deal with. Efficiency is a big reason. So I do some numbers. We took 15 employees for 15 plow beats. And you took an hour plus the truck time or running time, getting it out just in the morning for the hour. You got $1,000 wasted because of having to move equipment and shuffle stuff around just to get the equipment out, hook the plows up, and get loaded and get out to the highway. There's a safety concern with our equipment being close as it is, pinch points, hazards, visibility concerns. Exhaust fumes, there's little to no air exchange. Shop areas where there's trucks, some of the trucks are stored, the shop crew works in these conditions. Response time, whether it's snowstorms, tree calls, accidents, anything the highway department may take care of. You have to dig the equipment out to respond to whatever certain situation it may be. Overhead costs of this building. Heating is a main cost. Month to month, it's a fair amount of money. Buildings of this size do have a higher cost, but it's tough to even maintain 60 degrees in this building to melt these trucks off. So you can rinse them off easier the next morning if they ain't gonna wash them off 10 o'clock at night if they get in. So they would drip dry off and then you would go through and rinse the sand, salt off. The floor drain in the back there is degrading. It's an old cast iron pipe. We had the city come in and try and clean it out. The best they could do is get it back open. The end of the drain is also busted off, so we're gonna have to get somebody down there to bust the concrete out to repair that. The building was built in 1962 and 1963, so the building's 62 to 63 years old. Originally it was designed for single axle dump trucks. We are at tri-axles and quad axles, significantly bigger. We've outgrown this building for quite some time. Buildings have been talked about, whether it's the sheriff's department or the highway department, been talked about building something. We're still here at this point talking about it. Washing trucks, lack of space. You'll have trucks sit outside idle for an hour, guys waiting around to get their equipment cleaned up. Or you just send them home and then they have to come back and clean it the next day. If our turnover rate on our trucks doesn't improve, a better way to keep these trucks clean is a newer facility will help you utilize the space and take care of equipment better. The building doesn't have much for safety features. It's got fire extinguishers, eye wash station, nothing for whether, you know, somebody has got to have a shower, get rinsed off, there's nothing. So, so that brings the question, what we do if the building started on fire? All our equipment takes 18 to 24 months to get these trucks built right now. Got 2 in order. Be lucky if we see them January. We ordered them in November. So, I mean, with the rising cost, you can't replace 15 to 18 trucks if this were to happen. So our highway crew, they come in, they leave. The comment was made about that, but it's not just the highway crew we're dealing with. The highway department has $11 million worth of equipment that they park in their facilities. That's of the original price. That's not today's prices. There's a significant amount of money that the highway department has under house for the roofs that they take care of and use primarily on a day-to-day basis. How much longer can we keep sticking money into this building before it fails? This building needs repairs. We've been doing low maintenance. Last summer, we had the roof patched to keep a majority of the water. The boiler system needs a new pump seal. We have a radiant heater that needs a replacement. A couple, I don't know, $3,500 just for that. They're so old they can't even repair them. They can't just buy parts from them, so they gotta replace the whole unit. The new roof on this building, this was last summer, we got an estimate, it was approximately $300,000 just to replace the roof before they got into it and seen anything else. That was just the roof replacement. The building has a purpose to serve the county. It's an investment. If we wait any longer, the costs only go higher. We've already seen that. This has been a continuing situation for looking at buildings and doing something with them. With a new building, the shop would become a shop instead of parking garage. When we walk through, you guys seen the shop was full of trucks. You pull the trucks out, you let them idle all day, 20-degree day, otherwise the equipment's not gonna fire up the end of the night. But it's gonna sit outside until it warms back up. Parts in stock room. We got parts all over the facilities. Outside, we got a storage container that we purchased last year to hold some more of our parts. There's times where we double order parts because you can't find where the part may be because you thought it was there, and then you check over here and you can't find it. You order the part, you put it on, and you might find it. There's flooring options for salt shed, county shed. When we did a walkthrough, you guys seen the walls bowed out. So we're exploring salt shed options. The county shed was originally a state salt shed. It was built in 1988. The buildings are all older on the site. In general, it's not just the main building. The last building on the property that had been built to put a piece of equipment into it for the county was 1980. That was a sign shed, 1980. The last building that was built on the property by the state was in 2000. That's the big state shed. The site the highway department is currently located is in the city. Well, there was some questions and discussions about moving this out of the city. You run into the issue of city utilities, water supply. That is a great cost when you go out of the city limits. You're going to spend millions to supply the facility with all the water. We got salt sheds all there, so then if we moved all the facilities out, then we'd have to travel down here to go to our salt sheds unless we build new ones, which is another added expense. We got the fuel islands out here, ain't that old. So then we'd either leave the fuel islands there or build new ones again, but either way, you're driving down there just to fuel up. Current location is the most feasible option. I just cost and efficiency, the property's not bad, we have a lot of older buildings on there. Majority of them, if this facility happens, can come down. I sent CUNY equipment numbers for the facility to show what equipment's in there. I'd say you're looking at all but maybe a couple pieces of, whether it's a truck or something like that, that's kind of a seasonal situation. So everything's in there. Yes, if there's any questions?
Questions for Justin?
How much in additional building repairs, maintenance, and so on do you spend a year possibly save by having a new building?
We've been pushing it off for quite a while. So this last summer, we spent 20-something thousand just for roof repairs. And that was just for them to go up and bandage a couple spots, not replace or anything like that. They cut out a couple sections, put the new roof vents in and resealed it on them. Same thing with the other roof. They just put screws in the metal spanning, some of the fiberglass panels. That used to be like the lights or the clear fiberglass that would shine lights through. That's where a lot of the water comes through because the fiberglass is eroded over time. Have not, we've tried to stick as little as in these buildings as we can.
Other questions?
When did they put that rubber tarp on, rubber roof on the whole complex? How long ago did that go on?
Oh, I couldn't actually tell you that. It's been quite a while. I would guess, I would say probably 20 years. But that's a guess.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Thank you, Justin. Next on the agenda, we have presentation by architects.
John Wallenkamp, CUNY Architects. Next slide, please. We've had the great opportunity to kind of be the second player on the project here, meaning Wold Architects was hired by the county to do a assessment for the entire county of all the facilities. As it was mentioned earlier in the presentations, the jail and the highway shop scored very high of something that needs to be done. I guess that's why we're here. The team of experts from our office that's been on this project for yourself has been working for over 160 years on projects just like this. As we started into it, next slide, please. The RFP that went out suggested that you build a 24,000 square foot facility for just storage of the vehicles. As we get into the plans, I'll kind of highlight that. What kind of diverted that is what I see is our expertise and the committee and staff, like looking at it like we're just touching on a very small piece of the problem at that site. So as it was presented here tonight by others, we were saying, you're better off designing this whole thing. And at that time, we were just saying master plan. So what you're going to see tonight is what we threw out there is what should be master plan. So when we did do the 24,000 square foot storage facility, it was all ready to go for A, B, and C, D later on. But as we started running all the numbers, it led us to say, we really think it's best in the best interest of the county and the residents of the county to do this right away. That was our expertise. That's what we see for the last 35 years that I've been doing this, working specifically on projects like this for the county, municipalities, all over the state, all over the Midwest. Next slide, please. So looking at the site, The upper right building is the private, larger building there. The gray building on the right middle is your existing facility. We're primarily going to talk about the colored image. The light green on the upper right is the 24,000 square foot footprint. The brighter green in the upper left is what, right off the bat, we said, in that 24,000 square foot footprint, we can't even fit all the vehicles in there that we feel should be frontline fleet. And then bottom right, office, orange, repair bay, yellow shops, and blue is wash bay. Next slide, please. So here was what we call the base bid. And as it's been recommended tonight, we feel we master plan this, we design this 100%, and this would be your base bid, the 24,000 square foot facility. This fits 24 vehicles. This will fit the primary frontline vehicles, frontline plows, everything that definitely needs to be indoors 100%. Okay, why do those vehicles need to be in there? Well, first of all, as was mentioned, you got $11 million minimum in assets. Okay, if they're in the correct environment and you have the correct wash bay, all those pieces, that $11 million investment, we can show you right on paper, bottom line, will give you 3 to 5 more years for that vehicle. Okay, it will give you better resale when you go to sell that vehicle. It will give the mechanic a lot less time on that vehicle because it can be repaired properly. So these efficiencies aren't just the building to build a park a truck, it literally trickles down. But more importantly, the safety. If you've been in that building, a safety claim wipes away the value of this building. That's not a threat, that's a worry when we go through buildings like that. So if you have not been in that building, please go in that building. I would recommend a workshop for the residents of this county and take them in that building. That building doesn't lie. There's no lie there. There's like no lie in the jail. There's no lie. You go in that building, there's issues. Building mechanical systems need to operate properly for health. Okay? You work in that building, you're not in a building that's operating properly. Okay, it was brought up, what funds are we spending in that building? The county's doing their due diligence. They're purposely not spending funds because they don't want to waste it. But if it's do nothing, we will run those numbers for you. Because it's going to be a substantial number, what you need to do just to bring that building up to code and safety. Next slide, please. So the blue kind of on the left, that would be alternate number 1. That'd be adding 10,000 square feet to the 24. And then the bottom right, office square feet, that's 5,600 square feet. And that primarily houses operations that's there today. From the commissioner, finance, to supervisors, to the multiple foremen, lunch, training room, support, storage, that's in that space there. The orange is a repair, fleet repair, so all the vehicles get repaired there. It's an in and out type, very efficient repair bay. The right side of that is parts, office. The left side is the weld fabrication bay. The yellow is storage and the blue is the wash bay. As I mentioned, we can do the upper right, the 24,000 square foot piece, but a lot of the efficiencies you would gain just aren't there. And eventually you will have to do them. Eventually the building will totally wear out that you will have to do them. So it's really just timing. So we prepared slides on costs just to make sure you understand bare minimum what we do today. When we interviewed here in December, I said, you guys, you did a fantastic job with Wold putting together that. The estimate you had for the 24,000 square foot was right on the money. So you had $7 million. It did everything you needed to do to get you to 24,000 square feet. As we built the program, the master plan, we started saying, why should we go a little farther, or what should we do for the citizens of the county? Next slide, please. As I mentioned, these are the highlighted pieces. We can come back to these if you have specific questions. this is the main 24,000 square foot footprint. And if you look, this is a total budget cost. Very important. If you look at the upper band, I can't see the number there, but it's kind of a gray. This was what you will hear on the street. When people say, well, I built a building for X number of dollars, they are just talking about the building. They are not the construction cost. They are not talking project costs. So sometimes you will hear, well, we give you the full construction cost. So as you see there, that's what you see. Next slide. This is adding the alternate. So the bright blue, the 1.8 million is adding the additional storage on there. The yellow on the bottom there you're seeing is if you do nothing, what that additional cost would be in 5 years. Next slide. This is doing 100% of the building. And there again, the bottom yellow, if you do nothing except the 24,000 square feet, the yellow is what you'd be spending in 5 years if inflation stays at 3.9, which is normal trend. As everybody knows, that number spiked 25% in the last 3 years. Now we're but that's normal historical values of 3.9 for this type of.
The previous slide, you said 5 years for inflation, but the slide shows 2.
I'm sorry?
You go back one slide. You said 5 years, the cost of inflation, that 2 representative of a 2 year? 5. Am I just misreading that?
It doesn't say cost inflation to 2035, 31?
2026.
2026, and then
Okay.
the quantity of 2.
Okay, then it was just 2 years. So we updated from there.
That's for
Thank you, sorry. Next slide. Everything that goes in this building is analyzed to make sure it helps pay for this building. We are highly confident, basically, by tracking all the facilities we do, these buildings pay for themselves. It was mentioned the utility costs for this. This new building can be double the size of the existing building, and your utility costs are probably gonna be quite a bit less. Okay, but every component we put in here, we work with the staff, we work with the committees to make sure we're putting in the proper systems to show how this building can pay for itself. Next slide. Vehicle parking. We analyze every vehicle stall, every vehicle, how it turns, how it moves, how it needs to dispatch. There are certain vehicles, yes, that need to be dispatched immediately without moving 1 or 2 vehicles. But there are certain vehicles that can be stacked in. We analyze that with staff to make sure we're right sizing every single stall in the building and location of equipment. Everywhere different bulk fluids are put, air, wheels. Our goal is to save 10 minutes a day for every staff member. 10 minutes. You add that up over a 10-year cycle of staff, it's a tremendous number. And when we go back to other facilities that are new that built the master plan, they say we way underestimated those numbers. Next slide, please. Bulk fluids, every component is placed specifically to the county's use and how they deliver their method. Parts, every piece of inventory is known where it goes back, where it came from. So if a part's ordered, we know where that part is. Construction phase, we oversee the construction phase. We make sure we pick the proper construction method that fits the region, the area, and the durability of the building. This building is not a 20-year building. This is a 50 to 75-year building easily. You go back to most highway shops, they're old. We won't have to address this building in a long time. Bottom line is you're creating an environment that we talked earlier. It's got to be attractive for staff, but more importantly, more than anything else, it's got to be safe. Questions?
Oh, on the wash bay in there, my understanding is that's just a carriage wash with manual washes. It's not like an automatic car wash. Everything is
100%. So we'll analyze your fleet, which we have. it doesn't really warrant a manual automatic wash that you don't have. There's certain wash systems that won't get in the areas you need to get into for your fleet, so you need personnel to get that pressure washers. But bottom line is, more importantly, the chassis wash can be used from all. Sheriff can come through that. There's things that vehicles just naturally, if you hit with a chassis wash, tremendous improvement in life expectancy of the vehicle and longevity.
Any other questions? Meyer?
Should have pushed my buttons there, Mr. Chairman. Can we go back to the very first slide? With the overhead view of the area? So what's the thought process going, if this was to go forward? What are we gonna do with that south set of buildings, et cetera? Are those gonna be eliminated or any thought put into that?
Yes, the buildings that can remain on site, I can't read from here, will be cold storage used for assets that are not in this building. So there are assets that don't need to be in this newer building that we're gonna take advantage of and keep them in the existing building. If we don't build 100% of this building, you're gonna have to still keep the existing vehicle storage building to keep assets in it. So, Justin can speak more on specific, but there again, the buildings that are gonna remain have functional use in them and have program space to be used within them.
Because that orange, the 10,200 square feet is going to be the repair base, right?
That's correct.
So I would assume you would be going in and out to the south.
That's correct.
It looks from overhead that we're getting kind of tight to the next set of buildings. That's why I'm asking, are those buildings to stay?
Those two buildings would be gone.
So those two buildings, last time I was in them, weren't the worst. I'm almost wondering if this thing should be up to the north and take that old hoop down.
And I'm glad you're bringing that topic up. I should have touched on. We are still studying the best footprint position of the building. We've turned this, twisted this, mirrored it. So we will take that into account when we final design with staff, but that we're still positioning it. Maybe this thing should be sliding all the way to the west farther.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Mr. Coggins?
You talked about efficiencies in the building design, and I'm on the committee, so I'm up to date on stuff. But are there still room for efficiencies to be built into this design? For instance, in the office space, there's like 8 offices in there. Is that really necessary? Can that be whittled down and add to the shop area? Or is it still a moving?
100%. This is a master plan that we're at this level today to see whether we continue master planning those lower pieces, or do we know what that 5,600, if this is going to go 5 years, we don't need to fine tune. My goal is to get the circulation, the hallway spaces down to as little as possible. We still need to vet all through that. Yeah.
Freeman?
And you had mentioned that the building would sell. So have you got an estimate of the savings? You didn't really give any specifics.
Yeah, the goal is that 10 minutes a day that I talk about on employees. You start adding that up. So it's not printing money, of course, but what it's doing is it's making money, freeing staff time up to do tasks that they can't get to, that they may outsource. So and we, as we build this, will continue to show that efficiency chart, and we can bring it back to committee and show that too.
So right now you only have staff time. So there's no efficiency in utilities.
There definitely would be efficiency in utilities.
Idea of what?
Yeah, something like this, typically, if we double the building, the utility is going in half. So we're still paying half the utility cost for this new building, which is double the size.
Later.
Had a few people jump on me about this, and I said, well, we can go back to 5-yard dump trucks and a plow, but then you'll be complaining because your roads aren't getting clean. So then they sort of stayed quiet. Anyhow, those two south buildings, I don't see why, those are good buildings, yeah. I built pole sheds and some of them lasting a lot longer than those as usable buildings for either cold storage or possibly heated storage. The county's always looking for storage. I would prefer to keep those buildings. They aren't shot yet by any that I have seen. No. There is a need for storage.
Yeah, well taken. We've definitely, like I said, I should have stated, this site plan movement has been a kind of a moving target, and we landed it kind of right in the middle where it could be. But definitely we'll take that into account to make sure nothing gets removed from the site that has valuable life.
Any other questions?
Take a shot at it.
Mr. Rotherham?
These are not my opinions, but I did agree to share them. Somebody else asked these questions, and one question was that the trucking industry is quite a bit different than it used to be. I know we talked about outdoor storage in the wintertime for trucks, and many commercial trucking operations do not park all of their vehicles outside. You know, not nowadays trucks. There was a time when it was hard to get them started, that kind of stuff in the winter. Store them indoors. And like I say, I don't know enough about that end of the business to say that that's a good idea or not. The other question that came up was, I think Justin mentioned, what would happen if a fire would break out in the old building. Fires break out in new buildings too. And you've got that $11 million worth of trucks in that building. And if you have a fire in that building, you might not get very many of those trucks out of there. So there again, the question was whether it's totally wise idea to have all that equipment parked inside. I don't know enough about that to evaluate that, but that was presented to me from somebody in the industries.
Would you like, should I give my opinion on those that help answer? On the trucks, I guess what I would say is part of the efficiency. You can park every vehicle outside, as we all know. You just got to allocate the time to clean them off when you need to use them. And so I mean, that's, if his staff had to park the vehicles outside, which you just have to make sure you can clean them. Our goal is to show you what can be done and what is typically done in the industry with a fleet of this. Fire protection, I will tell you, this building has to have a sprinkler system. No matter what, in a given zone area, 5 to 10 heads, every literature will show you will contain a fire. So you may lose, yes, 2 or 3 trucks, but you won't lose the whole fleet. So to me, the investment in a sprinkler fire protection,
That makes sense.
Documents show that's why sprinklers need to be in buildings per code when you have certain gross weight vehicles and that.
Russell. Yeah, the last time you were here, we talked about efficiencies. And you brought up that 10 minutes per person number. But my experience is that never materializes unless you do a head count reduction and you take that 10 minutes per person and you translate that into number of people. So I'm pretty skeptical about that number. I'm sure you've run the numbers all over the place and you've gotten that number, whatever that number would be. I mean, you could do it pretty easily for our staff. It'd take you 5 minutes. But then they're still going to be there on the payroll. Saying they're going to empty the trash, well, they wouldn't have emptied the trash before is kind of thin.
Yeah, I'm not, what I'd love you to do is when we were presented the project here, we gave you a list of references. Every one of those references pretty much went through similar to the hard questions and things you guys are doing. You call them. I don't make that stuff up. have no need to sit here and present something that I don't feel is true. I'm just telling you, when we go back and I audit every client we do, and I've been doing it for 35 years, they tell me, John, that number's underestimated. And maybe that's a good thing to do when we do cite it, bring in individuals, or you make a phone call, because they can tell you what true light, they sit in the buildings all day long. 100%, you don't get rid of an employee, but I guarantee a snowplow that's not parked in or backed in will dispatch quicker than one that is black. So, but if taken, I have no advantage of telling you something that doesn't exist. Yeah,
It's just not something you can.
Possibly correct.
Well, it might be more efficient, but it doesn't
With
pay any bills.
where we see it paying the bills is if you can prolong a vehicle purchase 5+ years, that's substantial dollars.
That's the number you want to. Labor savings is all paperwork.
Yeah. But I'm just saying it's made up of a whole different pieces.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have a presentation back there, which is a recorded presentation. Somebody online to questions after.
I don't know what that means.
This is gonna be nasty.
Like, so I'm talking to her. Still today. Yeah, I did try.
Yeah.
It's trying to tell you that it's time to go home.
Well, Lois hit it with her hammer.
Let's take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 8:50. We got some technical difficulties that'll give us time to straighten this out. It's 8:44 right now, all 6 minutes.
I'm gonna go.
Mr. Wedwick.
Recess to 8:50.
Oh, gee.
Get my water out of my truck. Got to bring it in.
Let me just make sure as long as I make it, I actually go.
It's too late now. You let everybody.
I already let her.
It's just.
I never got that far. We're gonna listen to the beginning.
Brendan's all had, is it on PO?
So I didn't get all of it.
Oh,
I might think so.
it's a long process. It's done. I'm gonna.
How much?
Mid-June.
Jail. Been up there.
Still.
One.
Be that.
No, don't use scare tactics.
Actually stronger now than we can. So Gilby.
Yeah, absolutely.
And nobody's done anything about it.
Yeah, right.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Seen.
It's a little bit different for.
Anybody coming into this meeting, so you're gonna have to do something to it.
Right.
Get out.
It's a thing.
My car kept on that. You need a breaker.
It's such favorites.
I did.
Well, I think what they're saying is that's not that you're not gonna save time, you're gonna utilize time.
We just call that like cost.
Cost avoidance, but it's not cost avoidance. Everybody is.
That's
It's 10 more minutes. It's screw off before it's time to go.
Right.
That's all they do. But I've been on the road a million times.
got shovels that stand up by themselves.
Yes, they do.
Oh,
They don't stand.
It's not finance.
You didn't know that.
But is that?
Yeah, that
Did you get sort of a tour then?
That was, it was incredible. It is, I mean, I'm sure they. Stick.
It's not new.
Oh, of course it did.
But it is, I mean.
Something new there.
One of my customers just did
Tomorrow.
in his driveway and just had a wheel there and I think.
Under baffle.
To myself,
Baffle.
you
Well,
know,
it's
everything.
nothing, I mean,
It's not even safe.
Like we.
it's just really a pipe that goes on.
That's what he was explaining, yeah.
Too late.
Comes back and goes through the dam and.
Whoever's on the
I
council.
had a family who started performing.
You know, everybody cited it, how you regulate the
Previously.
I worked up.
but they gotta get it up now quite a bit.
Pretty sure somebody.
I worked on like, hey.
That doesn't even.
Yeah. They've lessened it. It's supposed to be 80 feet.
Try it. We have one more. That's it.
20 degrees forward by Friday.
Something like a.
Yeah.
So you guys.
Well, they found it in the 30s, now it's going in
17. Cellular.
So.
We made to make it obvious.
It and
That's what.
the problem is. People do it.
Well, that's not even.
Things like that today.
I got some things in the morning,
It's a little bit.
and I'm like, oh, that's great. God, see, management services. And then something 2 o'clock, and then.
You can.
uh,
Everything.
3, the whole thing comes in the afternoon. And then.
After it's dark.
It's all.
He can go down and just.
So they turn.
They had some quote on their house. That's funny because it's like.
Only a couple of them there. Water level gets too high on.
No,
That's gonna take care of the. Water.
Oh, water. I got one on the other end. So.
to be because they've cited. Because they were watching water in the ditch. No, no, I think.
When they signed the Constitution. I was not going to allow us to get standards.
Oh.
10 days after.
They did it. I mean, it'll be very interesting. I mean, I want them to get it done. Because I want the BBC to get the dam built again. I want that water level come because a lot of those. Horrible right now. Turtles are right now. Well, unfortunately, there's lots of.
We'll just pick them up.
This is water level. There's wood that comes up like this and the turtles are all lined up. They're out there. A lot of. Yeah.
Start filtering back to your feeds, please.
They are.
Really shiny.
Beavers. I haven't seen them. They are. They have. The dam.
Well, my bladder is safe.
I hope this is a clip note. The hearings and the public meeting about it.
All right, we are ready to start the presentation by Baird. My name is Justin. Any questions for Jordan? That was Justin giving the presentation, but Jordan should be online here.
Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Can everyone
we can hear you.
hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great.
Are there any questions? Any questions?
This is not a question of just, I'm not sure that anyone else could read that screen any better than I could. Is it possible that this presentation could be emailed to members?
Was.
Sent it to the board.
It was.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, it would.
I'll have to look.
If you double check, if you haven't received it, let me know and I'll forward you the email I got with it on there.
It's on the website for where the agendas and packets are posted to.
Yeah.
Came from Ashton.
Okay, I just went to
There too.
the agenda that came out.
Mr. Schneider.
Just a basic question. I think you answered it, but why would we spend $17 million immediately and let inflation raise on 33 million? Why wouldn't we flip those two? I think I know what he said about that, but can you clarify that a little bit?
So are you saying, are you preferring to do more now versus just doing this 17.5? Is that what you're saying? More the jail
Yes.
now?
We're gonna do
Yeah,
a
so-
$17 million project and put a $33 million project off. Costs are gonna go up on it. Wouldn't it make more sense to reverse them? I think I know what he said about that, but I just want to double check.
So you're saying if we push out the jail for 2 years, is that what you're saying?
No, if we switch them around, because right now they're talking
Oh,
about the jail or the
Yeah,
highway
if-
and then the jail.
if you
If we do the
do
jail first.
do the jail first, so yeah, that's, I guess what I wanted to more or less say is this prioritizes the draw schedule. So this is, I think what Justin mentioned was we're keeping in line with our spending schedules, making sure that these funds are spent within the 24 month spend down for IRS purposes. If there's always a possibility, just depending on where the draw schedule comes in, because that's always a moving target, to accelerate projects. And for right now, it makes sense to spend the 17.5, as your draw schedule currently now is kind of more back end loaded. It starts in spring of 26. So right now, how it's structured strategically is you're still able to meet those spend on requirements and keep more of your investment earnings. If you were to accelerate that, I guess a con to that is you may not be able to keep some of that investment earnings, and Justin is going to go through that on the 15th, next couple days. So more or less what I'm saying is it was structured along what's currently being expected.
Mr. Coggins?
In the presentation, it was stated that if we earned interest that offset that came in so that we would be in excess of what was actually borrowed, that could be applied to the principal before we did the last bond issue.
Yeah, so like what you can do is, if all those previous projects are exhausted, you can take those earnings and apply it towards the project cost. So in a sense, if it's $900,000, you could reduce that final project by 9.5 less than $900,000. if
Okay.
all those previous projects have been fulfilled.
So along that same line, let's say that the highway shop project went over budget and the jail project went under budget.
Yeah.
Could you take excess borrowings from one project to offset the other? Or do they have to mean
They have to be
separate line
separate.
items?
Yeah, they gotta be separate. The proceeds have to be separate.
Mr. Willingham.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is probably a really bad analogy, but I think it sort of answers the question for me when I look at the numbers, is that it's kind of like when, in the old days, when I would go out and try to buy a new car. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to the interest rate. I just wanted to know if I could make the monthly payment. And I think our constituents somewhat are looking at the monthly payment. And so we may be taking the inflation risk. We might be taking some other total cost risks, but at the same time, we're mitigating the impact and maybe making our constituents, making this more palatable to our constituents, even if, I mean, anytime you're financing something, you're paying more for it than if you pay cash. And so I think that's kind of the compromise here is that, and that under 10 million, the feature I think is also makes it more sense. The other thing, which is not really a question and not totally related, but as we go forward, and I was happy to see that the county is starting to get more interested in economic development again. And that's been a missing piece of our county plan for a while. And it seems to me that one of the things that we need to be doing and doing a better job of is increasing our revenues. And we can do that by encouraging more development that raises our tax base and spreads that cost out over more tax base. So not that that's going to be an immediate answer to the situation. It would sure be good to see something come along that would replace the lost jobs at Geldwin and some of the others, and get back on that trajectory towards not only trying to reduce our expenses but increasing our revenues as well. I think that's good news, and I hope it's going to happen.
Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
On the agenda, we got discussion and possible motion. We got authorized proceeding with design development for new jail facility and highway facility project. So if somebody motion by Mr. Wedwick and a second by Mr. Coggins. And Mike, did you have a question or you're trying to make a motion?
I just have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So, the yes vote says we're doing what first?
Yes vote would be to proceed with the design development, both the new jail facility and the highway facility.
Okay, that's all that's saying.
Simultaneously.
Pardon me?
Simultaneously, we would proceed with both design phases. And I would let, I'll have Ashley just go through the resolution real quickly.
Okay, so I did want to clarify one thing. So in the resolution, it says taking large capital improvement projects under advisement since the completion of a facility study. And I realized that a lot of people sitting around here might not know what we're talking about. I can't remember who brought it up, but they mentioned the 1A and 1B. I think that might have been John. So I wanted you guys to see this quickly here so you understand when we say Wold identified both of these, what we're talking about, because we have so many new faces. So this was the facility matrix that they put together, and I believe Wold was commissioned in 2021. And then they worked through 2022 with the ad hoc master plan committee. So they put this together. They went through all of our departments and did a space needs assessment, looked at the facility condition, looked at the programmatic stability or suitability, and then totaled up. So the bottom line is out of 15. So I think when John mentioned that both of these projects are, you know, rose to the surface there. So you have the jail column highlighted and that came in at a 13. And then you have highway highlighted and that came in at an 11. And you'll notice that both of those departments are the two departments that are in the double digits. So you've got, you know, one that maybe is a 9, a couple that are 8s, but this is what they're talking about when they say these two rows to the top. So again, I just wanted everyone to have that same information if you hadn't seen this before. So then going through the rest of the resolution, I just again want to be very clear that a vote tonight is not authorizing us to go out for bid. A vote tonight is not authorizing that a jail is built. A vote tonight is not authorizing that a highway shop is built. What a vote for this resolution is authorizing is the design development phase for both the jail project and the highway shop project. There is an additional cost for this that's in your fiscal impact of about $1.365 million. The breakdown on those costs was included in your packet. If you have any questions, John and Corey are both here. They can answer questions on that. If you'll recall, back in 2022, we did pass a resolution where the county can reimburse itself with bond dollars because we are right now spending out of our reserves. We're spending out of our general fund to fund this. So if you do authorize a borrowing, we can choose to pay ourselves back, or we can choose to utilize our general fund for this purpose and further lower the impact to the taxpayers. So again, if you vote to pass this resolution, what you are authorizing is Venture Architects to move into the DD, design development phase of the jail project, and for CUNY Architects to move into the design development phase of the highway project. And both the schematic design, which they went through tonight, and the cost proposals were attached to this resolution. So that would be the foundation of where both of those architecture firms would jump off from in working with the ad hoc construction. And then those details, we mentioned, hey, we don't want to tear those buildings down. Can we look at a different site? This is the phase where we start kind of narrowing in on all of that nitpicky stuff, if you will.
First, the breakdown was 1 point in for the jail and 155,000 for highway, if I remember correctly.
Yes, and like I said, those are in here.
In the back there.
Yes.
Mr. Kudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially then, this resolution is not choosing a scenario.
Well, in some ways, it's saying that proceeding with both. I mean, if you didn't plan on proceeding with one or the other, I wouldn't vote yes on it to spend the money and then down the road vote no on it.
Well, I mean, the reason why is we were presented with 3 scenarios. But this resolution does not mention anything about either one of those scenarios. So I realize that we're moving ahead with the design plan of it. But so we have to make a decision again later on.
So there'd be
as to what
multiple more decisions. There'd be a bonding decision that would need to happen, which would have some of the different bonding scenarios. You'd have to, after moving forward to the design phase, it'd have to go to bid. We'd have to make a decision on bidders and accept a bid at that. There's 3 more votes or so.
And where does this leave us if this should fail tonight?
Well, then if it failed tonight, you could still vote on an option for either just a jail or just a highway shop or something different as well. Mr. Willingham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I understand correctly, and somewhat response to Mr. Kudo's question, what we're really doing is saying, we probably are going to do these two projects.
I would say,
And if we're going to do these two projects, this is what those two projects are going to look like from a design standpoint. Not how we're going to, time the buildings, which is a later decision. But if we're going to do it, we need to know what it is we're going to do. So these designs would produce that, answer that. And unfortunately, you have to spend more money than we'd like to spend to find that out.
6.5 million.
I think we're far enough along to know that we're gonna have to do something. So it's a question of what that something is.
Mr. Hanson.
How long is it gonna take to get this design thing done? Before our next vote, something.
I believe that Corey mentioned something about 7 months, and then John, if you guys did you want to come up quick and answer that?
It's 7 months to get it to, prior to
Okay, and John?
Just.
Right?
Any more discussion? Any more discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody else will come in.
Any more discussion?
Yeah.
Not? Vote no.
Be dead.
Okay.
Thirteen yes, 5 no, passed by majority vote.
Adjourn.
Right. Motion to adjourn by Jerry. And Mike, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
It's fun.